I need to figure out a way to tow this thing over to where there's no cops and do some more testing. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Now, before we get into all of that, I would like to give you guys a small update on the little C180 that started it all. Now, I will admit I have been kind of distracted by the Ford Power W203 these couple of weeks, but behind the scenes I have been tinkering with the M104 turbo. So the last video I made on this was building a new style turbo manifold for it, and I think that's going to be a real game changer. Since then I had to make some time to finish up the exhaust, so where the downpipe meets the rest of the exhaust system, I had a small change to make. Ended up taking about 7 hours to do about that much of a change. So the exhaust, like I said, where the downpipe meets the rest of the exhaust, it was a bit off and I had to change it. Ended up having to cut about a third of the exhaust off and then kind of remake that. Back when I built the exhaust, the car was very low, so I had to move the flex pipe because it was just dragging over every speed bump that I came across. But now that is ready to go, and as you can see, we don't have the turbo manifold on the car. The last thing that needed to happen to have the hot side of the engine completely done was to take the turbo manifold over to a machine shop so that they can machine the mating surface where it mates up against the head, so that we don't have an exhaust leak and lose boost. So the turbo manifold should be done over at the machine shop later this week. We can throw that on there, and then the hot side of the engine, like I said, will be done. Been about 10 months since this thing last drove. Blew a head gasket, but the head gasket is fixed. Just about done with the new turbo setup, and then I'm still deciding, but I really want to build a new intake manifold for the car, and with that upgrade from a 67mm throttle body to a 76mm throttle body, a few changes on the intake pipes or the boost pipes, a few changes on the water lines, and then this thing should be back up and running. It's about freaking time, but I really think this thing is going to be better than ever before. We'll get there eventually. Now over to this. So after spending the best part of a year touching about every square inch of this thing, from the suspension to a full interior delete, ripping out the engine out of that Ford Falcon and then stuffing it into this, I finally got to drive this beast for the very first time last week. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. For the most part, the car did great, better than I ever expected it to do, but we had a couple of issues. So issue number one was the alternator was not charging the battery, so I had to remove that, and to remove that I had to take the whole front end apart. But anyway, there was actually nothing wrong with the alternator. I just didn't know how to wire it up. So this is your main 12 volt that goes to the battery, that charges the battery, and then you have this little plug with 3 little pins inside, and apparently 2 of those pins, the 2 ones at the end, need to get a constant 12 volt power supply for this thing to work. So now that we have that figured out, I can get that back in there, and then the charging system should work. Having the charging system figured out is going to be a huge deal, but like I said, because everything is super tight in here, I had to remove this front piece I built to get the radiator moved a bit forward, to get the belt off, to get the alternator off. It's a whole process. A bit annoying to do that, but once that is all said and done, it's going to be well worth it. And then another issue was, let's be honest, taking this thing on the road might just be a bit illegal. I was kind of focused more on not being seen by the coppers and not really focusing on the car and how it's doing. But I do have a plan around that. So while I do have the front end off, I need to figure out a way to tow this thing over to where there's no cops and do some more testing. Now, the best way to tow a car is on a trailer, but let's face it, I don't have the money for a trailer. So the next best thing is an A-frame. So I got a super good deal on these 2 A-frames. This one kind of looks just homemade, and then we have a more legit one over there. But I was thinking I'm just going to take the tow bar thing off that one, get it on there, and then those 2 points I'll get some tabs made, and then that'll connect up over there and over there. And then, if all goes well, I should be able to hook this thing behind the W204 and tow it around. No idea if this is going to work, but I'm going to give it a go. It's worth a try. But I think let me get that alternator back in there, get the belt back on the engine, and then we can get started on the A-frames. Let's do this. Alternator back on there and the belt as well. It's a bit difficult to working here because I can't remove the radiator because the transmission lines go into it and then it's gonna leak all over the place. And then I got those two wires on that plug. So I think before I get the coolant in there, I'm gonna make sure that the belt stays on all of the pulleys. So I'm gonna give it a start up and then we can also check if that alternator is charging. I do have the laptop over here. So let's switch on the car, and there we have the battery voltage. So once I start up the car, that should pick up to around 13 or 14 volts. So let's see. Definitely charging, reading about 13.7, 13.5, so that's definitely working now. And the belt is staying on the pulley, so now I can get the coolant in. Success. Okay, now before I show you kind of my idea or what I have in mind for this, the idea with an A-frame is to be able to tow a car alone. I'm going to be driving the tow vehicle and then there's nobody going to be in the car behind me being towed. So if for some reason this part fails or something breaks, I'm going to be in big trouble. So I'm kind of overthinking this whole idea, but I really do want to make it as strong as I possibly can. So as you saw, I got these two tabs cut out. So this is 10mm thick steel, which I think is going to be plenty strong enough. And then I made a hole over there and a hole over there, as well as on the back side. So these two boxes are made of 3mm thick mild steel. And then this tab will just slide in like that, and then I'm going to get that fully welded all the way around in the front, as well as when you look at the back, I'm going to do the same thing over there. Slide it in, get it welded, painted, throw it on the car and test it. But before we do that, let me give you a quick update on the W204 tow vehicle. Recently had some issues with that thing as well. In my opinion, I think this is one of the best looking Mercs ever made. I don't know, I just really love the shape of this thing. C220 CDI with a stage 1 tune. For what it is, it's a pretty nippy car. Easy to drive, good on diesel, like I said, pulls really strong, but it's not without its faults. And this one is definitely not perfect. Used and abused on the daily. But anyway, so 4 weeks ago, checked the oil and coolant like one would usually do, and I saw this. Yeah, so having oil in your coolant is never a good sign. So we actually had this problem about 3 years ago as well. Ended up having to change the oil cooler, which is not a fun job. That's about the ugliest tow bar I've ever seen. Luckily it's removable. So So these cars are known for having some oil cooler issues, but I mean, I changed out the part for a brand new part only 3 years ago. So how do I have the same problem after only like 30,000 kilometers? Anyway, the other option is a head gasket. I really don't want to do a head gasket on this thing. So I just got a brand new oil cooler in there. So hoping for the best. I'm just keeping an eye on things. So it's been about a week since I got the new oil cooler in there. So far things are looking good, but I am just keeping an eye on things. And then another thing is we drove the car around for about 3 years without this little cover. So a friend of mine got one 3D printed. It's not the same color and everything, but at least there's no giant hole over there. And even with all the issues, that's probably still my favorite out of all of these. Great tow vehicle, I think, but we'll have to see. So let's get that thing welded, painted, back on the car, and then hook it behind the 204 and see if this idea is going to work. Got the front end mostly put back together. I'm not going to be worried about the bumper now, as well as that plate at the bottom. I just want to test this out, so it's about time for that. So I think I'm going to move this thing back and then figure out how I'm going to hook that up to there, and well, see if it works. I'm not going to do anything crazy, just going to pucker around the yard. I don't know much about these A-frames, but I know you can't turn very sharp with them, but my main focus is to see if I do turn a little bit just inside the yard, the steering wheel needs to turn by itself. So let's test it.
Ja, dis soos 'n trailer is daarom maklik.
Okay, so that was a bit of a hassle to hook it on. Let's see. Main thing is I'm going to see if those wheels. Ooh. Op 'n trekker kom en hy's 'n park. Okay, so car's in neutral. Let's see. You can already see the wheels turning. That's good. I can't see. That's perfect. I think it might just work. So I think it's safe to say that this might actually work. I'm still not convinced that this is a very safe way to tow a vehicle, but I mean, I am a one-man show, so I need to work around that. So with the A-frame, I will be able to tow the car once I am ready to do that again, or for some more testing. I can hook it up to the 204, take it to somewhere where it's open, and I don't have to worry about anything else other than just checking over the car itself. I guess the only thing left to do now is to do more testing on the car as soon as I get the chance, and then next step is going to be the bodywork and paint and stuff. That's gonna be a hell of a lot of work. I'll also add having the ability to start up the car and move it around makes life much easier. So that's another really good thing I'm excited about. The car starts up every single time and I don't need to push it around anymore. That thing is freaking heavy. And that lock diff at the back, that's a nightmare. Not much left to it. A couple of things I want to figure out and kind of sleep on that A-frame towing situation. I still think it's super sketchy. Oh, and if you guys might have seen something that I might have missed, something obvious, I mean, I can't think of everything. Feel free to comment down below. I really enjoy your guys' comments sometimes. You crack me up. Thank you so much for watching, and then I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
I don't know how to stop. I just go till I drop. Whether it's working or shots, give it all that I got. You can watch me work in my